Philosopher Schopenhauer. Arthur Schopenhauer was born in 1788 and died in 1860. He was a German philosopher known for his atheism and pessimism. He is known as the most prominent pessimist in the entire Western philosophical tradition. Schopenhauer's most influential work, which is The World as Will and Representation, does examine the role of humanity's main motivation, which Schopenhauer called will. His analysis led him to the conclusion that emotional, physical, and sexual desires cause suffering and can never be fulfilled. Consequently, he favored a lifestyle of negating desires, like the teachings of Buddhism and Vedanta. Schopenhauer influenced many thinkers including Nietzsche, Wittgenstein, Einstein, and Freud. In the book of On the Sufferings of the World, 1851, Schopenhauer boldly claims, "Unless suffering is the direct and immediate object of life, our existence must entirely fail of its aim." In other words, suffering and misfortune are the general rule in life, not the exception. Contradicting what many philosophers had stated previously, Schopenhauer argued that evil is a real thing, with good being the lack of evil. We can see this by considering that happiness or satisfaction always implies some state of pain or unhappiness being brought to an end, and by the fact that pleasure is not generally as pleasant as we expect, while pain much worse than imagined. Schopenhauer thought that life, both individually and as a whole, is meaningless, primarily because of the fact of suffering. It would be better if there was nothing. Given this situation, the best we can do is to extend mercy to our fellow sufferers. Quoted from https://reasonandmeaning.com/. If I comment about the idea of the philosopher, Schopenhauer, that our life is deeply embedded with the pain, meaningless, flaw, and we can't come out of the painful status that we are passing through with our own strength, and the pain comes from the physical and mental desires. Definitely, I think that he was right and saw a deeply agonizing status of humanity which is infused with suffering and pain. So, I can see about his understanding that he said, the pain comes from our desires, same as Buddha. However, I like to ask the related, another fundamental question to Arthur Schopenhauer: where does the desire so-called will come from? The desires come from striving, not to die, but to live, to survive from our reality which is sentenced to death and eventually die. In the Bible, we can meet the overwhelming status of mankind that is destined to die with sentenced to death at the place of the Garden of Eden, so-called paradise by God. In the book of Genesis, chapter 3, verses 17 to 19 is presenting us the picture very well. To Adam he said, "Because you listened to your wife and ate fruit from the tree about which I commanded you, you must not eat from it. Cursed is the ground because of you. Through painful toil you will eat food from it all the days of your life. It will produce thorns and thistles for you, and you will eat the plants of the field. By the sweat of your brow you will eat your food until you return to the ground, since from it you were taken. For dust you are and to dust you will return." I can say on top of Arthur Schopenhauer's thoughts, all pain comes from the fact of that we are going to die, and the strife of avoiding the fear of death which started from the Adam's fall in the Garden of Eden and the death sentence. We're deeply traumatized by the fear of death. The will that was mentioned by Arthur Schopenhauer is coming from the endeavor to survive. We're suffering not because of the will but because we lost the eternal life, the tree of life which was designed at the center of the Garden of Eden. And we have will that we're desiring not to die, but the reality is that we die every day. So that we're so painful from the fact, reality with recognizing the fact from the deep soul, because even though we desire to live forever, eternal life, we can't reach the achievement of eternal life and escape from the destined human's path. This is the great agony that we can't avoid at all. What the pain comes to us is that we're trying not to die. Our souls understand the reality that we're going to die. So, the pain comes from the truth that we can't come out of the fear of death. We're actually desiring to have eternal life, the status of no death, no worry, every moment, every day, in every aspects of life. But the achievement can't always reach the point of what we are desiring. Having eternal life is beyond humans' capacity. That is the reason why the philosopher Schopenhauer could acquire the title as the most prominent pessimist in the entire Western philosophical tradition. He wanted to settle down the first cause of humans' agony, But, he couldn't reach the first cause of the man's agony. After knowing him, I have really started admiring him because he really deeply agonized himself to understand what the cause of the suffering and pain would be. However, his theology couldn't touch the real cause of the power of death, and the fear of death beneath the pain and suffering of humanity. We, all mankind, put ourselves in a real pickle due to the death. Our pain will not be ceased until our spirit settles down the fundamental cause, the death.